All right. Welcome back in, y'all. We got One Piece chapter 1153, full spoilers. My name is Sai, and today we are here to talk a little bit about this upcoming chapter of One Piece. If you have not read the spoilers for yourself, though, yet, I will be linking it down in the pinned comment, as well as typing it out piece by piece so that you can follow along over there. But to start things off, we got the beginning of the chapter, which is all about King Harald and the woman that turned his life around. Yes, that is right. He meets Hardin's mom in the beginning, and he finds her in a circus, a human circus. Harald gets enraged because of that. He didn't exactly like the sight of his fellow giant being locked up in a cage by humans, so of course, he busted her out. Only to find out that Ida actually wanted to be in that cage. She was trying to repay the village for their kindness by acting as their circus freak. So, of course, because of that, Ida ends up slapping King Harald. He's very shocked by it, and then that's pretty much all she wrote, right? They just started falling in love right after, and Harald started turning his act around. He went from being a violent teenager to a man seeking diplomacy and reform. It's crazy turnaround, man. You know, Ida, dude, Ida is doing some crazy moves here. But yes, Harald wants to marry Ida, so he takes her back to Elbaf, but that is when the village elders tell him no. The giant elders say, no, you cannot marry her. She is of dirty blood. She doesn't live here in Elbaf. You can't do that. Of course, Harald isn't exactly happy with this, but he accepts it. Ida, despite all of this, still ends up living in Elbaf. She lives in one of the western villages, is what I think it says. Let me see. No, it actually doesn't specify which village she lives in, but yes, she does live here in Elbaf, and of course she does give birth to Hardin. But here comes the next problem. The giant village elders then decide that King Harald must marry a noblewoman, a woman of high stature that lives in a northern village called Alcohol Village, and that woman is, of course, Loki's mother, Estrid. It's funny because, yesterday's spoilers, her name was Estrid, but today, in the full spoilers, they call her Estrida. And because of that, I'm not really too sure which one to go with, but I'll kind of flip-flop here and there. But yes, that is when we meet Estrida, and of course, Harald, again, is pretty upset at this, right? He doesn't want to marry this woman. He has a love already, but he does it out of obligation, so it seems. Estrida was born in Alcohol Village, which, I gotta say, man, Alcohol Village? Send me the location. I want to go there. But, jokes aside, though, Alcohol Village, the naming of it is pretty significant, I would say. Maybe it's because I sometimes get too engrossed into One Piece theories, but Alcohol Village seems like the motherland of all the other liquor-themed islands, right? Like Kaido was found on Vodka Kingdom. We have Tequila Wolf. We have Whiskey Peak. We have Bourbon Wolf, right? We have Rum Wolf. Like, we have all these other alcohol places in the world. So is this where they stemmed from, or is this just a coincidence in naming? I am very much so wondering that right now. Like, why did Oda name this Alcohol Village? Of course, I'm sure the village produces alcohol for Elbaf, but still, based on the name, it seems like this could be where all those other liquor-themed villages and kingdoms and islands might have stemmed from. But we'll see, right? We'll definitely see about that one. So we go on a little bit, and we learn a little bit about Estrida. And it turns out that she is indeed a very beautiful giant woman who is dressed like a dancer. The leakers say that it is very similar to Nami and Vivi's attire back in Alabasta. And not just that, but she is very obsessed with Di Feng, which the leakers say is probably the One Piece version of Feng Shui, which I do think is what it is, because apparently when she gets to the castle, she is rearranging furniture, she's opening and closing windows, and yeah, that just seems super strange. Hey, personally, man, I'm not a believer in Feng Shui. I don't believe that your room needs a certain amount of black or white, or, this window has to be open, that one's closed. Like, I don't believe in none of that. So, of course, she seems like kind of a nut job, but that's just me. And sometime later, while Harald is overseas working on his diplomacy missions, Estrida gives birth to Loki. And we see Loki's eyes. So, yesterday, we called him the slit-eyed child. But here, we actually know which way the slit goes. And the leakers say that his eyes remind them of Sauron, the eye from Lord of the Rings, which of course is top down, which is very much like Snake Eyes. Yeah, I will say this, in the past 24 hours, I have been bombarded with theories. People saying, oh, besides Jormungandr, there's a guy from the show called Vikings who has snake eyes as well. And it's like, yo, like, I see it all, man. I see it all, you know? And I have concocted my own personal theory about this too. So, what do? Do we talk about this right now, or do we go on? You know what? I guess we'll go ahead and tackle this now. So, Loki having these snake eyes, having these Sauron eyes, I do think is significant. Hell, I would even say that this, of course, foreshadows what his ability truly is. Because Loki apparently has eaten some sort of mysterious devil fruit, right? Whether he ate the legendary devil fruit of Elbaf or not, he does have some sort of powers. Personally, I do not think it's going to be Jormungandr, or Nidhogg even. Right, I've seen a lot of people tossing around Nidhogg as well. I think those are great ideas. But the reason why I'm not high on those theories right now, could change later, but the reason why is because earlier on in Elbaf, or should I say midway through Elbaf, right, Killingham brought out nightmare monsters. And with those nightmare monsters, we actually saw Jormungandr already. We actually already saw Nidhogg as well. So that's why I'm kind of like divided on that, right? Would Oda actually take that concept of monster and bring it back in the same arc, but better, right? Oda has done that in the past, but not in the same arc, right? We had the Cerberus from Thriller Bark being brought back here in Elbaf, but it's way cooler. You know, Oda could do it, but I just personally feel like it might be too close to one another, right? Oh, here's Jormungandr 10 chapters ago, and now here's the real Jormungandr Loki. Like, that right there is kind of why I'm iffy on all of this, but of course, like I said, that's a personal grievance, but I do have an actual theory that I am inclined to believe right now, and that is that Loki is very much the karmic serpent that we saw in the mural. Back when we got the mural, we saw Loki, right? We saw the giant with the Loki horns, and they had this weird like waistband kind of design, and it looked, actually it didn't even look, it was similar to the pattern that was on the serpent on the right side of the mural. And we all thought that was very odd, right? So that is why we initially assumed that was Jormungandr. Jormungandr existed here in Elbaf. But what if that's not the case? What if Jormungandr and that serpent we see on the far right are two different entities entirely? What if Loki isn't Jormungandr, but instead he is the karmic serpent of the Earth God? That is where I'm at right now. And you might be saying, Sai, that's a little bit wacky, right? And I agree. You know, all theories are kind of wacky until they get more and more proof. But here's the thing. You know, I yesterday talked about Shirahoshi and how Shirahoshi was a really odd birth, right? Whenever the kings and queens have kids, 9 times out of 10, they're going to be normal. But Shirahoshi is the special mermaid princess that got reincarnated after all these years. Okay, reincarnation is the wrong way to put it, but, you know, the mermaid princess gets born every couple hundred years, and that is Shirahoshi. So I'm wondering, like, how did Loki get these eyes, right? Obviously, King Harald doesn't have the eyes. It doesn't seem like Estrid has these eyes, and it seems like their parents maybe didn't even have these eyes. So where did these eyes come from? Well, I think it could be exactly what happened with Shirahoshi. Maybe sometime during the Void Century, or even before the Void Century, there was someone with those Sauron-like, snake-like eyes, and it just got passed all the way down to Loki. I think that is what happened, and I think this could even explain the Devil Fruit mystery too, because last week, we were all wondering what the hell was going on with the legendary Devil Fruit of Elbaf, right? Because we heard initially that Loki ate that fruit. And then last chapter, you know, a flashback that took place 14 years ago, we saw that somebody entered that room that wasn't Loki, right? So Loki most likely didn't eat it, unless there's more to that flashback and Loki comes in there too and he takes that fruit from the person, which seems a little bit weird, right? And then we do know that a year later, Shanks gets the Gomu Gomu no Mi from a world government ship. So what's going on there? Like, what did Loki eat? Is it the same fruit? Is it a different fruit? Were there 2 fruits in the room? There's a lot of fruit talk going around here, man. It's getting crazy. But what if Loki never ate any devil fruit, and instead, his powers actually came from these eyes? What if his powers actually stem from the Void Century? Kind of like how Shirahoshi is an ancient weapon, maybe Loki is in the same vein. I'm not saying Loki is Uranus or Pluton, but what if he is like a fourth ancient weapon or a fourth force from the Void Century? So I do think these eyes will be very significant. I think there will be some inherent power that comes with it. And brother, Oda only brings in stuff like this if there's a greater, grander explanation. He's not going to give Loki the only demonic Sauron eyes in the series and not explain it. So I do think this will be very important. But yeah, dialing it all back for a little bit, I do still think that the Jormungandr theories could work here. Like, at this point, I'm sold that Loki's a snake, right? You know, I see the snake eyes. I think he's a snake. But now it just boils down to which snake. Is it Jormungandr? Is it something brand new? Is there like a third Nordic option out there? I'm not super sure. But also, I just gotta say this real quick, but I love all the theories that you guys posted in yesterday's video. Like, apparently I need to watch the show Vikings because so many people are referencing a character from that show. But yeah, Snake Eyes Loki is a thing. And it's freaking cool, man. I cannot wait until he takes off those damn bandages. So, we go on a little bit because we're not done with the chapter, but because Estrida is so perturbed by Loki's eyes, because she's so freaked out by what chaos Loki can bring, she ends up dropping him into the underworld, hoping that he would die, right? And she's doing this all while King Harald is away. So King Harald has no idea what is happening to his son right now. Hell, King Harald doesn't even know that he was born yet. And here we have it. Estrida is trying to murder his child. So we cut over to Loki, who is now in the underworld, and all we see around him are fallen animals. Baby Loki is injured, right? He's cut up from fighting these monsters, and we end off the chapter with him climbing up that damn tree. Like a snake, might I say. You know, snakes crawling up trees. Yeah, that fits, man. That fits. So, you know, yesterday I was wondering how Loki beat the animals. I was like, oh, is this like the world's strongest baby over here slapping animals around? And a lot of you guys said, oh, this could just be Conqueror's Haki. I'm like, oh, that's perfect. You know, like, Conqueror's Haki could be the answer here, right? Maybe baby Loki was fighting some animals here or there, and then after a good couple of minutes, Loki just unleashed a Conqueror's Haki blast. Kind of like what Luffy did back in Impel Down, when Bon Clay was carrying him around, and then the wolves were attacking, and then boom. You know, Conqueror's Haki blast. So yeah, I could definitely see that being the case, especially since Loki last chapter also hinted at having Conqueror's Haki when talking about the Holy Knights. So yeah, I think that's all pretty fine and dandy. And that is also when we see a narrator box pop up, and they say, from Queen Estrid falling into sickness to Harald being troubled by the wall that exists between countries, every disaster that befalls Elbaf from this moment onward is now going to be credited as Loki's curse. Yeah, that sucks. It looks like Loki is going to shoulder a lot of this burden. Everything bad that happens to Elbaf is going to be blamed on Loki. And at this point, I do not think there is such thing as a Loki's curse. I do not think he's the cursed prince. I think he's simply a child who's taking in all of this blame because of his crazy mom. I mean, in this chapter, you know, after she throws him out, she says, remove that child from this world. Indeed, it has been foretold even before his birth that one day King Harald will be killed by his own son. Estrid has been a Loki op before he was even born. That's crazy. You know, Estrid does not seem right in the head. And now I am oh so curious as to how she dies. We know that she dies within a year of giving birth to Loki. And people say that's Loki's curse. You know, Loki did it. But I don't think that's the case. I do not think she dies because of Loki. I think it could be one of three things. Initially, yesterday, I said that maybe Harald kills her. You know, he comes home, he finds out that Estrid's trying to kill his son. Maybe he puts her down, right? He never even really loved her in the first place. You know, he loved Ida, and Estrid is kind of just this other woman. So maybe Harald goes on a rampage. Or maybe a sleeper choice would be Ida. You know, maybe Ida comes in and she kills Estrid. Because in the final page of the chapter, Ida is talking about Loki, saying, oh, he's your little brother. Wouldn't it be wonderful for you to meet him? Ah, the babies. And then, of course, Hardin doesn't like the thought of having another brother that's not from his mom. But yeah, like, Ida seems really happy that Loki's here. So maybe Ida walks into the castle and she sees Estrid trying to kill baby Loki, and Ida goes wild and kills her. You know, like, your two lovers fighting against each other, that could be the case here. And that could even explain why we don't see Ida today. Because as it stands, Ida is living in Elbaf. But current day, we have no mention of her. You know, we don't see Ida in the village. We don't see Hardin talking about his mom that lives here in Elbaf. No. Ida is just MIA. So maybe Ida does kill the queen, and then Harald, to protect her, sends her off to live somewhere else. That could be it. But of course, a third option would be that just Estrid gets sick out of nowhere. Which is what the chapter implies, right? Queen Estrida falls into sickness. We don't know how she became sick. Maybe there's simply a disease that's rolling around here in Elbaf. Maybe somebody's poisoning her. But yeah, there's just so many options we could go with. But one way or another, Estrida, man, she's got to go. I mean, it depends, right? It depends how hot she is. Because I did say, man, that Estrida is a very beautiful giant woman. She's just a little bit crazy. So last thing to talk about is, of course, King Harald, because he is being stonewalled by the world government. King Harald is around here trying to make ties with Fishman Island and other nations, but the world government is getting in his way left and right. And he's wondering, why can't these countries act freely? So I do think next chapter we will get a run-in with maybe the Gorsei, the Holy Knights, or maybe even Emu themselves. Because, you know, Harald's getting fed up, right? He just wants to establish trade. But the WG is not letting that happen. They're not letting it slide. Which I gotta say, you know, earlier in the spoilers, I forgot to mention this, but one of the first kingdoms that King Harald reaches out to is actually Fishman Island. You know, he's trying to start that talk with them. But what's funny about that is that we actually know that that kind of falls through. Because when Jinbei first showed up here in Elbaf, a lot of the giants were shocked. They were like, oh, a blue-skinned man, like a fishman. I've never seen this before. So yeah, King Harald is definitely going to fail in regards to all of this. And I can't wait to see why. You know, how does King Harald get stomped dead in his tracks? Can't wait to see it, man. And also Big Mom. You know, Big Mom currently, in accordance with this flashback, she is on the island with Mother Carmel. So will we see her next week too? Because I'm curious, man. You know, Mother Carmel is over here running operations, you know, selling orphans, selling giants, like selling war. Like, I do wonder how the Carmel Harald interaction will go down. Does he know what's happening or does he not? Because right now, King Harald does seem like a really good guy. So I doubt he knows. You know what I mean? But with that being said, though, y'all, thank you so much for being here. I really freaking appreciate it as per usual. Let me know your thoughts on this chapter down below. How do you feel about Loki's eyes? Do you think it's Jormungandr? Do you think it is the Karmic Serpent? Do you think it's something new entirely or just something different? I would love to hear any and all of those theories down below. Of course, in the next couple of days, we will be going through and reading through the comment section. So if you want your theory read, make sure to drop it down below. Doesn't even have to be a theory. Could be an opinion. Could be a funny gag. Could be something that is unrelated to the chapter, you know? As long as it's at the top, we will end up reading it. But yeah, you guys take care, and I'll catch you all later. Stay safe, and peace out, brother.